Okay, I'd like to call our meeting to order. Town of Southington Board of Finance meeting. Today is January 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and we'll start our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Before we go to the roll call, I do want to mention that our community lost a well-known person and a longtime volunteer. We lost Lou Palmieri today. He's the father of our deputy chief and a recently retired police detective. Very, very involved in the community. In fact, the Western Baseball League named their main field, dedicated it to Lou several years ago for all of his work at the West. So if we just take a minute to remember Lou at this time and his family who served our town so long in their time of grief. Thank you.
It's Dennis Conroy this week.
Yes. For Dennis also. It's hard to remember, to know all the names, and we should have a way to remember for Dennis as well. Hopefully, as our community evolves, people will step up and take on where these people left off and help other people at all times, like we say in Scouts. Okay, let us move to the roll call.
Mrs. Zoney?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mr. Bedoin is absent. Mr. Pocock?
Here.
Mr. Lebenik?
Here.
Chairman Leary?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. No public hearing item. We'll go to the approval of the minutes from December 8th. Motion and second. Any discussion, changes, amendments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain. So we're... Okay, today we have a presentation from Alberio Energy, who's our energy consultant for the town. And if you could join us up at the...
Yep, sure.
If you are 6 feet away, so if you want to remove, you can.
Yep.
It's up to you. Just
Nope.
so you could be heard better.
Sure, no, that's
whatever
fine.
you prefer.
No, I'm comfortable. We got enough distance here, so I don't know how many people have the presentation, if everybody has it.
It was sent out at the last meeting and also.
It's
Email
part of
to
the
us,
package.
too.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'll briefly go through each one, just as a background of information. My name is Bill Reardon with Alberio Energy. The predecessors to Alberio Energy was Taylor Consulting. I was a partner in the business for the better part of a decade. Matt Wheatley, who was the sales rep who was handling your account, he left the company, gave his notice. Last day was the end of the year. So I'm stepping in. So I'm slowly getting up to speed a little bit. I've researched a little bit of your accounts and got a little bit of information. And Matt presented this proposal, or not proposal, but really a recap of what you guys have been doing. So I have familiarized myself with it, but if I'm not 100% up to speed, I apologize, but obviously we can go through it, ask questions as you see fit, and happy to answer any way I can. So what we're going through today, your electric supply agreements, natural gas, which you actually don't have supply agreements, you're with the utility, or at least that's my understanding, fuel agreements for diesel fuel, gasoline, some of the solar things, fuel cell things that you're doing, a biopower plant that you're involved with as well, and then some future things to consider, community solar projects and the like. We did have a conference call earlier today where we discussed this, and there's just some unique opportunities for the town to save some additional money that we're happy to help explore for you folks. So under the electric supply, we've got a recap of your actual consumption. We've got it broken out into 3 separate sections: town buildings, Board of Education, which obviously is the schools, and then your water district. This past year, the height of the COVID year, you can see your consumption at the town buildings was down significantly. Some of that could be COVID related. I can't speak to what you've done for upgrades in equipment and controls and any other changes that you might have made, but some of that could have an impact as well. Schools have seen a significant increase in consumption. Again, that could be COVID related, some additional air circulation that could be taking place to make the schools more healthy for students to come back to school. I can't speak to what's going on at the school, but there has been a noticeable increase in your consumption there. And the water district, about the same, slight increase in usage. Under your electric supply agreement, you do have a contract that just kicked in December and January of this year, December of 21, that goes out for the next basically 3 years. Fixed rates at 7.34 at the town and also at the schools. The water district is slightly higher at about 7.5 cents. Represents a significant reduction in your fixed price supply contracts compared to where you were previously. This is a function probably of when the contracts were locked in during the height of COVID, when demand was really low. So the town was really smart to jump out, take advantage of low prices. We're seeing completely different turnaround in energy costs this year, and certainly over the last 2 to 3 months where prices have risen dramatically, both for natural gas, electricity. You see it on the street with gasoline.
Do you have a price on electricity now?
Right now, you'd be looking well over 10 cents on fixed price contracts. So you're 25, 30% below market today on your fixed price contracts. The wintertime historically is the worst time for electricity. Excuse me, that's when demand is at its highest point for natural gas. Obviously, with heating demand, natural gas is the primary fuel to generate electricity throughout the country, so that's what everybody pegs off of. So if you're a power plant generator, it doesn't matter whether it's coal, oil, nuclear, renewables, wind, solar, you name it, everybody pegs off natural gas. So when demand is really strong for natural gas, electric prices go up. But this year it gets compounded by lack of supply, and demand is rising as people kind of come back to work. And although we're still in the midst of COVID, it's obviously more normal, I guess, if that's such a thing to say these days. So we're seeing demand increase and supplies are tight. There's certainly been a shift to renewables, not only locally here, but across the state and really across the country. So as the nation moves more towards renewables like wind, solar, hydro, things like that, we've got a transition away from so-called fossil fuels, and you have to have the supply there to meet the demand. And we're in a little bit of a, hybrid right now when it comes to trying to transition over the next decade or so. And you're seeing some supply constraints in the marketplace, which is driving prices much higher. But the town is in great shape on the electric side, locking in good for 3 years. Wouldn't recommend doing anything beyond what you've done right now on the electric supply side. Certainly could start to look at extending those contracts a year or two out into the future, depending on where the market is. I don't anticipate prices will get down to where you are currently locked in. It was kind of a bit of unique circumstances that allowed you to take advantage of the market to lock in at those rates. So I do think that in the future you would probably pay higher, but you got 3 years to go before you have to worry about that. But certainly worth considering in the next year or two to at least start thinking about it. One of the good things about deregulation for electricity and natural gas, you can buy any time for any time in the future. So you could buy today for 3 years in the future. You could buy 6 months from now into the future. So you can take advantage of dips in the market when they're out there. Part of what we do as a consultant, try to advise clients as to when it makes sense to do those type of things. But right now, wouldn't recommend it because the rates are 25, 30% higher than where you locked in. I don't think anybody wants to step out 3 years in advance to lock in those type of increases, but if you wanted to, we could certainly do that for you. So that's your electric supply situation. Any other questions regarding electricity?
You said December 21st and January the 22nd?
Yes.
There's two sets of contracts. Who do they apply to? Is there one for the town, one for the Board of Ed, or...?
The town and the Board of Ed are on the same contract, same rate. The Water District is on a separate rate, separate contract. My guess is going back years ago, based on meter read cycles, they were probably done differently for one reason or another.
I've got it.
There was,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
that's usually what we see happen. Any other questions? Okay, on the natural gas supply side, to the best of my knowledge, all the buildings are with the local utility here, which you probably have been for the better part of ever.
Yeah, we did, years ago, we did bid it out, and then it just wasn't beneficial.
Yeah, again, I first started in this business back in the early mid-'90s, so I've been doing this for the better part of 30 years. I would say 25 out of those 30 years, you were better off buying from the utility on gas. So this year might be one of those years where you would have been better off on a contract had you locked in, say, 6 months ago or a year ago when the rates were really low. But even at that time, you would have been locking in at a higher rate than the utility. So you would have had to have the foresight to say, oh, you know what, by the time January 22 rolls around, gas prices will be through the roof, so we'll lock in what looks like an increase. We'll actually save some money. If you got the crystal ball, great. Not too much.
Why is energy different from natural gas? I mean, electricity.
Electricity and gas, from how the utility buys those two things, there's two. I guess the easiest way to describe it, you have two separate components. You have the supply itself, the physical molecules of gas, and then you have the pipeline to move it from the wellhead where it comes out of the ground and move it to get to the state of Connecticut and then obviously to your town. In Connecticut, the utilities own all the interstate transportation that moves gas through the pipes, whether it's down in the Gulf of Mexico, Western Pennsylvania, wherever the gas is coming from to get it to Connecticut, the utilities own that capacity. And as a result, that capacity has tremendous value. Where somebody out on the street, if we're going out to secure energy for somebody else, we have to go into the market, or not we personally, but the gas suppliers have to go in and secure that supply, and they have to secure it for 365 days. Your energy peaks in the middle of the wintertime. You have to buy the same amount of capacity to serve those accounts year-round.
Okay.
Very inefficient, very ineffective. So therefore, you're better off historically with the utility. So Connecticut is.
That's a nice explanation.
Yeah,
Bill.
Connecticut's a little unique. Every other market that I work in, we work up and down the whole East Coast. Connecticut is unique in that respect. Massachusetts, the capacity goes with the customer. So we have a lot of customers that buy gas on third-party contracts up in Massachusetts. Rates are better than the utility rate, but you're guaranteed the capacity for when you need it and for the amount you need. You don't have to buy,
It's like a variable capacity.
Exactly. So it's so here in Connecticut, it's just the way the markets were deregulated 10, 12 years ago. Whenever it actually happened, the state agreed that the utility should maintain ownership of that capacity, and then suppliers are on their own. At certain times, there are very attractive rates to go out and buy capacity, and you can get pretty attractive fixed price contracts, but they're few and far between. So I think it's probably the most financially viable thing to do is to continue to remain with the utility even at a time when prices are high. And you should see a reduction in the utility costs probably in the next 30, 45 days. Once we get out of winter into February, you'll start to see those prices come back down.
And we have looked at it several times, at various times.
We're just at market price, whatever the volume is in the current price, that's the bill,
Right.
like every homeowner.
Correct. Yeah, utility adjusts every single month based on real costs. So it just kind of is what it is. And again, you've benefited for years on that, really. This year you'll see an increase, but everybody's seeing increases in cost on the natural gas side. But I do think you'll see a reduction probably in the next 30 to 45 days. As far as your fuel supply, you've got.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is there any correlation between amount of energy supplied from natural gas cents and cubic feet
Cubic feet, yeah.
to kilowatt hours? I mean, is there a correlation between the measurements?
There isn't a singular correlation, but generally speaking, as gas prices are going up, electric rates will go up, and as gas prices come down, electric rates will go down. But you can't say, well, if gas is up 10%, electric's up 10%. It doesn't work that, it's not a perfect correlation, but they do move in the same direction.
Yeah, I was more interested in the amount of power supply.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, you could do a BTU analysis and
Yeah.
how many BTUs in a kilowatt of electricity versus a BTU in a thermogas and all that type of stuff. It's kind of a mathematical formula.
You're saying
but
it's complicated. All right.
Yeah, it's complicated. Generally speaking, natural gas is the least expensive fuel to burn. Electricity historically is the most expensive because you have to use so much of it. I think I forget the exact number, about 3,800 BTUs in a kilowatt of electricity, and 100,000 in a thermogas. So it's, you got to.
So essentially do the math.
Yeah, by the time you do the math, you're paying a lot more. If you were going to heat a building, electricity is probably your most expensive
Understood.
option compared to natural gas. And natural gas historically is cheaper than fuel oil. So,
Thank you.
yep, you're welcome. Any other questions? You have gasoline and diesel fuel. Obviously, you're looking at increases in these costs going forward. You see it out on the street, right? I mean, if you locked into rates, which you did do a year or two ago, you were paying $1.19 and $1.40, and now your new rate's at $2.08 and $1.97. So you've seen a significant jump in these costs, as is everybody. Anybody that has a car and fills up at the gas station, you can see.
But we're
those
still
costs
in
are
a
rising.
favorable position versus market.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, compared to just going down to the local gas station, yeah, you're in much better shape to do that. And historically, most people are. If you've got bulk storage tanks and you can fill up for your town vehicles and things like that, you're better off with those deals. And I do expect that prices will remain strong for gasoline and diesel fuel. Crude oil prices are very strong today compared to where we were 6 months and a year ago. I think that's a trend that will likely continue.
Demand or supply driven?
It's a little bit of both. So supplies are tight. Back in COVID, when demand was non-existent for gasoline, nobody was driving. Most of the big major oil companies stopped producing or reduced their amount of drilling that they were doing and putting oil into inventory because there's just no demand. So prices obviously dropped significantly. We saw that, one month last year, I think it was April or something like that, where oil traded negative. So that was just kind of a market-driven thing. But we've had demand increases. People are going back to work. You see it with traffic, more cars on the road, things like that. The oil companies have to get back up to speed relative to producing and refining and getting it into storage and all that type of stuff. And demand is outstripping the growth in supply right now. So I think that balance will continue to be the case. There's been talk with OPEC increasing production and stuff like that. But, the United States released some very minuscule amount out of the strategic reserve. Made some good press, I guess, but, it was like a day's worth of supply or something like that. But anyway, so that's, I just think that demand is going to be strong. And like I said, they're very tough when it comes to producing additional resources, drilling, XL pipeline. You can get into all the political aspects of stuff and why demand is outstripping supply right now. But like anything, if demand is strong and supply is tight, you're going to see prices go up. And that's no different than what we're seeing in the energy industry today. Any other questions? Okay. As far as solar goes, I guess you folks have, some of your schools have solar panels on the roof. And obviously, every kilowatt hour of power that the solar produces is a kilowatt hour you don't have to purchase from the grid. So that's just obviously avoided cost is how it's classified here because you don't have to buy that off the grid. All we're doing is looking at the amount of electricity that's produced, multiplying it times your average rate to come up with the forecasted savings. So generally somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 is what you're saving per building by having those solar panels. So it's a pretty good deal.
That's
that
the
you have there.
annual 12-month number?
Correct. That's based on 12 months. And your consumption will go up and down based on, obviously, the number of daylight hours for sunlight and stuff like that.
Now, is this before or after the payment for the solar equipment? Is this net or?
This would be net after you've paid.
Well, these are leased.
Yeah, so you pay, whoever owns it, you pay them.
So this
and
is
then-
a net savings?
Net savings, exactly. So my guess is they probably installed these at no charge, and you agreed to buy the
Yeah,
power and
built
stuff
in.
like that. Yeah, so they're great deals, honestly. I mean, it's just straight savings, call it free money, but, you're ultimately giving them the roof space to put the solar up, and then you get some marginal savings associated with it. Most towns are better off doing this type of deal versus owning it yourself. You don't get any of the tax break. Federal tax on solar installations was 30% of the cost, and now it's down to like 26 or something like that. All the depreciation, all the value you get with these assets, a town doesn't really get those tax breaks, so you're better off having someone else own it, and you just take the power at a discount. So I'd say what you have here is pretty reasonable, given there was no cost out of pocket. You have a fuel cell, which similar situation that's owned by Bloom, I guess, and you have a power purchase agreement. They produce a certain amount of power. You agree to buy it at a discount compared to nominal rates, and these are your net savings or avoided costs. Is again how we have it identified here. Anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 a month is what you're recognizing in savings based on that fuel cell. And that's net of what you pay to Bloom, paying them between $12,000 and $13,000 a month for the amount of electricity produced. So, again, just straight savings, which is great.
How does the fuel cell work?
The fuel cell basically produces electricity. With natural gas, you pay for the gas that goes into the fuel cell. So it's basically, for the sake of discussion, it's your own little power plant. You're generating electricity, gas comes in, produces electricity. You use less electricity than if you bought it off the grid because you're buying it from the
Where
fuel
do we
cell.
have this thing?
The water push and control.
Oh, okay.
This was, this was discussed many times, water push control.
All right.
Yeah.
We'd like to do it elsewhere in town, but we just don't have a building, high school that would generate it.
Yeah, you got to have enough demand
Yeah.
to make it worth in this case, Bloom. They're not going to produce a fuel cell for somebody that uses a couple $100 a
Right.
month of power. So you have to have a large enough demand to make it worthwhile. The quantum biopower performance, I have to say this is a little bit unique for me. I don't see a lot of this, but this is, again, something that you folks contracted for where they're producing power through an agreement that was signed 5-6 years ago, and you just realize a percentage of the savings that's based on the electricity that's produced through this power plant. That's again looks like they're taking waste from I don't know wherever they get it from.
This is a virtual net metering
Okay.
situation. This is a power plant that came into Southington.
Yep.
And what they do is they take food waste.
Okay.
They reconstitute
Oh, yeah.
food waste into
Yep.
other products, and an offset of that.
The power that's
So the town
created.
of Southington had the first right of refusal to take whatever
Mhm.
produce at
At
a
it-
cost.
Yep.
So it's how much power they produce depends upon what kind of product they're doing.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit different. So this is a one-in-the-kind situation. So once
Sure.
it works out well. For them.
Absolutely. Makes
So
perfect
they
sense.
pump it into the grid,
Yeah.
and then,
Right. It's like I said, virtual net metering.
Yeah.
It's nothing tied to Southington except for the fact that we're able to get credits for the money off of it.
Yep. Which is great.
So the difference from year over year in savings, in actual everything, is purely because Quantum couldn't get the food waste from the restaurants?
Well, that and they were doing upgrades, so there was times where, and Nat will know better than I, but there's times where they were producing more than other times, so that maybe.
That they were doing some kind of construction or upgrade.
Oh, okay.
Or using more of the power and not putting it on the grid. So we
okay.
just basically.
Our agreement is to take the power that they don't use on site.
Don't use, yeah. Right.
Yep. Okay. And then I guess The last page has to do with potential new opportunities, virtual net metering. This is something that the state just approved additional allotments of solar net metering credits, basically, which allows solar companies to build a field somewhere within the Eversource territory. The energy gets produced, gets put up on the grid, you buy the credits, so the credits get put on your bill, and you buy them at a discount. So there's opportunities out there. We were on a call today with another company that's offering 20% of the discount. So for every $1,000 in credits created, you would pay $800. You keep 20%. In that example, would be $200. Just straight savings, cost you nothing. To me, they're basically free money. If you can grab it, you should with both hands. So they're fairly attractive programs. They sell out fairly quickly. So there's a limited amount of space available. Solar providers have to present to or provide a list of places where they want to build. They get approved. Not 100% get approved. And obviously, they're only so big, so you only have so many credits that are produced. And it's something that the town has taken advantage of in different programs. So this is just the latest one that's now available. And based on the call that we had today, they're anticipating that the awards will be given by the state to the solar developers over the next week or two, I think. Annette, is that what they were saying? So sometime pretty quick. So I think the council should be ready to make a decision when presented that you jump on it as soon as you can, because
So if we've got the land, this is...
you don't even need the land. It
No?
can be built anywhere. There's actually, one of them is proposed to be built in the town of Southington. It has nothing to do with you folks. I'm not familiar with the land, but somebody does have a piece of property that they will look into either purchase or have an agreement to put solar up if they get chosen. And then you guys would have an opportunity to buy the credits that are created there. But it doesn't have to be in the town of Southington. It can be anywhere, really, as long as it's in a town that's serviced by Eversource.
Yep.
That's the only requirement there. So again, assuming that the council thinks it makes sense to have the agreements in place that say, yes, we're going to do this, so when the awards go out, whoever the solar providers are that have the space, you jump in and grab as many of the credits as you can. That's literally cost you nothing, and it's just so-called free money. You get, upwards of 20%. Some companies, the one that we had been speaking to previously, they were offering 12.5%. So the amount of percentage you get to keep varies. So you want to obviously make sure that you're getting the highest percentage possible. 20% seems like a pretty good number based on the conversation we had today. So, but you can go with multiple companies too, because nobody has enough to serve 100% of the load. So this is where you might end up with multiple agreements with different companies. And if there's an opportunity, you should do it with as many people as you can. You just want to make sure you don't buy more credits than what you can use. So you don't want to have, $50,000 in credits and you only need 30, because then what happens is you just end up with credit balances on your account with Eversource and you can't get the money. So the utilities won't refund you the money. You want to net it out equally. So if you're spending $100,000, you want to get $100,000 in credits. If it's $50,000, again, you just got to do the math. And it's something that we help customers out and give you recommendations on the total amount that should be allocated. Any questions on community solar? No? Okay. Other than that, again, I'm relatively new when it comes to this particular situation, but I understand our contract expires in basically 60 days. The town will be going out for a new bid, I'm sure. So we'll look forward to when that comes out. And if there's any other questions that you have for me or us, I'm happy to answer them.
Specifics of how performance is affected by things like caulking and weather stripping or the use of space heaters in building?
No, we
No
don't.
part.
Yeah, we don't do that. But I would recommend that if you have, generally speaking with the utilities, someone like Eversource, you check with them. They have approved energy efficiency companies. And same thing that, and there's dollars that are available through Eversource. Every one of your bills has a energy efficiency charge tied to it. The money goes into a fund. You can go in, you get weather stripping, you get light bulbs, insulation, whatever the utility is offering in order for you to reduce your total demand. take advantage of it as often as possible, LED lighting, all sorts of different things. It's really whatever Eversource is offering. And that's something that, we're happy to look into for you if you've got specific needs at any of your buildings to try to reduce your energy demand wherever you can is always a good thing. So I would recommend taking advantage of those programs.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for
Okay,
coming down from
great.
Boston to be with us.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Okay, assess our financial state of the town, revenues and expenses.
Sure.
Could kind of take them as one in a way.
We're halfway through the year, hard to believe. Our prior year's taxes are 70,000 over budget. Interest on taxes, 70,000 over budget. Building permit and fees are 180,000 over budget. Town clerk fees, 400. Perma equity and interest, about 76,000. Pilot tiered program came in, it's about 18,000 over for.
Expense side?
Currently, we have a couple accounts that we need a little additional money for, but they're all contractual in nature, clothing allowance, that sort of thing. Departments that are having any. Correct. We budget accordingly.
You budget accordingly.
Right. As far as the savings, we've kind of estimated based on what we're currently getting. So yes, we know what the rates are for. Yeah. Yeah, or to, unless it's unusual usage. Up until recently, we really haven't.
You have to go shovel coal?
1970, I'm looking at Annette because she's the one who helped me replace them. They were from the 70s, I think, the two burners. We actually, the two furnaces we're doing now, one that's half the size of the other two are doing the whole building now, so the two we had before, so. Anyway, we have a brand new furnace here in the town.
Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Living large, aren't
Yeah,
you, Mark?
that's right.
Brand new boiler.
The hamsters are still doing the elevator, but we'll get that done soon.
Mr. Schroeder, while we're on that topic, is there some company that does the energy audits for the town or for the school?
There you go.
Sorry, Annette, but this is important to me.
A lot of that was done by Noresco when we did the performance contracting project years back. Specifically, I can get you a list of the buildings they looked at in each energy conservation measure. But, I mean, it's been a few years, so we certainly could talk to Eversource and have someone come out and take another look.
I mean, I have concerns in, particularly in the schools, because having been there, we have windows that leak water when it rains and air blows through, just like the window. To me, that's wasting our money. We have the library that's freezing cold all the time. It could be the middle of summer and it's 60 degrees in the library. And we have rooms where secretaries are running space heaters to keep warm. That's a little bit crazy to me. And I'm not sure why all that's happening.
Somebody recently looked at some of the school buildings too. Look, very recently. I know Pete Romano had some meetings scheduled. I can get with him and find out exactly what they were looking at.
I'd appreciate knowing what the results of that was.
Sure, no problem.
And what their plans are.
Okay.
Because every time I look at their long-range plans, I see window caulking, and it just keeps moving and moving and moving. And all the federal money came in for air circulation stuff, and nothing's happening.
Okay, I'll look into it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Back to expenses.
We're starting to see an upgrade in, well, we have a situation where we have several people out of public works means getting the work done with less people.
The capital projects?
I'm going to push that off a little
Okay.
bit more.
Okay, the subcommittees. Sewer, Mr. Morrison?
Two things. We're just finalising the actual closure of the plant contract. That's dragging on for various reasons. And secondly, there's going to be a request tonight to move $1 million over from the sewer fund over to the operational side in order to continue the pipelining project, particularly in the Old Borough area. And I won't go into details on that because it'll come up tonight and I'll let Mark talk about it.
Public Works?
Try to not make it too lengthy, but the leaf season went real well. The collection, I have to say, they've saved money, and they covered some of the areas, 2 to 3, at least 2, but some of them were 3 were completed too. So there was quite a bit of savings there in the labor part with the rakers and with the equipment, thanks to
This board of the town council has authorized us over the last several years. Sings the praises of the fact that we're able to. That's something that we're going to continue. Not that we're ever going to be able to do it with just our own staff, but we have saved money and time.
Are we buying those little portable, the little trailer units, or the full vac
Just sit in this
balls?
corner seat right over here. And you'll be all set.
They're pretty substantial sized. They're basically equivalent to a VACOL, but they have to be towed behind a truck. They don't drive themselves. But the VACOLs we have don't mulch up the leaves. These do. So when they go into the container, you can fit a lot more because it's all compacted together. So we don't have to go empty them as often, which is fantastic. So every time we get a couple of these leaf machines, we're able to cut out a few contractors, which is great because over the years that I've been at Highway Parks, we used to get numerous leaf bids, and it's gone down and down. This year we actually only had 2, and we only used 1 contractor because they had 6 units, but it's...
So those things are strictly for leaves, and the vac balls can clean the storm sewers?
Yeah, we'll always need, at least a VACOL or 2 because we do use them for other things, like you said, the catch basins. But for leaf season, and they're much less expensive than a VACOL as well. So
Yeah.
even though we're only using them for leaves, we definitely make up for in the savings from the contractors.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions?
They were very good savings to the town. There's no. Got one more coming in yet, right? And that,
Yes,
one more.
we got 2 a previous year. We were supposed to have 2 more coming in this year. Only 1 came in before leaf season, so we'll have the other one soon, obviously before next leaf season. But the more we can get, the better.
Don't pitch your budget yet. You'll be meeting with them soon enough.
And the other thing is a couple council members the other night brought up the fact of scheduling and everything else. There's already started from what you said. People can find out if there's worked on. Answered very well by Annette. What else have I got? Was the ice storm, we all know about that, but with the heavy rain and everything else, we lost some of the product we put. Went well, anyways, that's all I can say. I thought. The A lot of people asked about why we didn't sand. DEP discourages the use of sand, so that's the reason why it wasn't. And on the trails, the extension that's being held up by matters and bridge on Spring Street is running on a one day, and it's been doing good. I've been by there many times. It seems like that. The only thing I got left is the Newell Street Bridge is being looked.
I do have a question regarding Public Works, and I'm not sure who's going to answer this one. When Mr. Poulos was on the council and on the committee, and when I was on the committee, there were questions regarding adding stop signs for Prospect Street and West for this public safety of the students that are walking to school. Has there been any changes or any?
Net'll correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a study that's going to be. Final authority, of course, is the chief.
You know when that study will be done? Hopefully not in the winter when there's snow on the ground and the kids are getting rides.
No, we had a little change, as you know, because you were on the Public Works Committee, we were considering a traffic signal. I think we've moved more towards a four-way stop. So we did have a couple proposals already in, but they had to revise them to gear it more towards a four-way stop instead of a signal. We were also waiting for a third quote, which we received. One of them still needs to be revised, but hopefully before the next Public Works Committee meeting, we'll have a recommendation on who to use, and then we can proceed from there.
Okay. Would you please keep me informed as to the status of that?
Sure,
Thank you very much.
no problem.
Okay, we all set? And
No,
we'll move into open space.
got open space. There's not very much on open space. We've it was mainly maintenance that we took care of. Leaf got the barn down there's got a new roof. The Grosky farm is being held up only because you can't get product. So, and they're in the process of signing leases for different areas. A couple of farmers where there's all looking at bids. Going along good. And then we had executive session on other things, but that's out of bring it out. Good.
Any questions?
Well,
Oh,
can I
go
just
ahead.
throw in one more thing? There also was a committee was set up for the green, one of many, quite a few committees, but that's the main one. Going to read. Got some new initiatives that we're going to be doing. There's going to be green. There'll be one committee. On another committee, there'll be signage. Historical is trying to savage hunt, and you're going to try that. And education as far as leaf program. So.
Guys don't work at cross purposes.
They brought that up, but,
Okay.
well, I only just.
You have all the-
We want to make sure.
And while you're here, what side of how much of the trail do we clear snow and ice from? Do we have a little policy? We leave some of it for, people want to walk in the snow and some for people who want to walk without the snow?
We clear from Curtis Street to Zingarella's. We clear that section.
Okay.
But it is secondary. Like I know the storm we got on Friday, the guys worked 13 and a half hours.
So
So
you're not going to run out and do that.
we cleared it Saturday. So
So it's just that section.
just that
There
section.
was some chatter popped up on the internet about what's cleared, what isn't.
Yep.
But, okay,
We
perfect.
had talked, we had talked in Public Works previous years about clearing additional space as well, if time permits. I'd really like to see that happen if it's possible. I
Well,
mean,
there's
we
a
don't want to
downside
work
to
in,
that, though. There's a downside,
because there are people walking it anyway.
right, but there's a
So-
downside because we purposely wanted to leave that section open. Decisions made on that one because
We had talked about that in Public Works previously when you weren't there, and there's no evidence that people were using it for snowshoeing or that for the next little section from Zingarella's.
I'll be happy to take the input from the open space committee or the.
Public
We'll
Works
talk
Committee.
about that further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Self-insurance.
Sure. So we're 6 months now into the fiscal year. We have results through December. We've been under budget for all 6 months to varying degrees. We stand halfway through the year at just under $1 million under budget, or somewhere around 9 or 10%. So, we would expect the second half of the year for the claims to rise compared to the first. We do have a budget during the second half of the year that's higher than the first. So, we'll continue to analyze that and monitor it. Obviously, always good to be under budget versus over. We know it's unpredictable, so never declare success until the year is over. And then we set I can't recall our last meeting if we spoke about it or not, but we did set the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So we're currently at $23.5 million, and we were using $1 million from the fund, from the reserves. We set the budget for the upcoming fiscal year at $24.5 million, so it's an increase of around, I think, 4.3% or so. Again, using $1 million from reserves to offset that. So this year we were 23.5 minus the 1 is 22.5. For the upcoming fiscal year, we set it at 24.5 minus the 1, it would be 23.5. Couple of comments on that. One, we'll continue to analyze that. The Self-Insurance Committee can act on the budget through March, I believe, per our policy. And then we can look at it again if requested by the council. And the second thing that we want to do is we do want to look at how we're utilizing the reserve fund. So we have a policy in place. We can only recommend, I should say, 1 year use of funds. But what we did as a committee was, so as not to create a fiscal cliff, we put a policy in place where we would recommend utilizing funds in year one as part of an overall 4-year plan, where there wouldn't be a drop-off of any more than $250,000. So obviously $250,000 times 4, the most you can use in year one is $1 million. That is a policy that we're going to look at, again, as a committee. We're, I'll say, locked into the extent that we created this policy for ourselves to using the $1 million. The reserve fund does have a healthy balance. I'm not trying to forecast that there would be a change to that, but I am saying it's something that we're going to take up at our next meeting and see if there's an appetite on the committee to look at that policy. And obviously we would look at the budget again based on the most updated projections at the time. But as of right now, that's where it stands, is 24.5 versus the 23.5 this year.
Same contribution percents are being recommended for the budget?
We did not change or did we change
No.
No, we did not change the contribution. No, between the BOE and the town. We didn't change it this year.
Right.
We look at that in our October meeting, I believe.
Yes.
And the employee contribution in too, that's all part of it, right?
No.
No.
They don't have control over that. That's
Yeah.
collective bargaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, economic strike, anything there, Mr. Morris?
Yes, just a couple of minor things. Most of the last meeting was in executive session, but there's activity going on. We had an industrial building approved for Burrett Street, which is great because we're kind of running out of inventory on the industrial side. But there's also, this isn't financial, but Lou Perillo wants to do another tour of the town for all boards, members and commissioners. Just to look at the town, see where we are. He's trying to do it in the spring. He's trying to set up in the spring. I don't know if any of you did it 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think it was a great thing. I really learned a lot about, actually where we are in terms of commercial, industrial, and retail space. So that will be in the spring. That's it.
Yeah, he does a great job with
Yeah, it was
those.
good. It really was good.
That sounds good. Any other subcommittee reports? Anything? Yes, Mr. Bedoni's not here for investments, but anything from the fire commissioners?
No,
Okay.
we have busy, so.
I'm going to try and meet with fire and police just to, a few years ago we did, and we can't do it. It causes a FOIA issue if we go as a group and have a meeting that's not a public meeting. So a few years ago, I think 2 members of the board just sat down and had a conversation. No specific agenda, just a little bit into what's going on in the fire service and the police department. And it's good to get some perspective before the budgets are submitted. So just letting you know, I am trying to set those up. But anybody's welcome to reach out and communicate. That's what we should be doing. So letting you know that's happening. Any other committee reports? Any board communications?
Chairman, the only thing I have is, I know that from the town manager,
I'll second that. Any public communications? Members of the public?
We would need the public.
We need the public, yeah.
There's that
They trust us.
technicality.
They trust us.
They love us.
Exactly correct.
Be surprised, not a lot of people in the audience, but a lot of people do watch and stream it. Because when you're out and about, people say, I saw this meeting or I saw that. So we have to always remember to be cognizant of the camera and the microphones, that we give them what they want to hear. But yeah, they do watch. They're not here anymore. Years ago, remember, I go back 10 years or 11, 12, it used to be a lot of people. There were at least 2 or 3 different members of the press, and we'd have, about 10 folks in the room. And then less and less drama, and we're down to people watching on video, which is fine. I guess that's a plus, right? We're always welcome.
We'll check on the ratings tomorrow and see what the ratings are.
Mr. Chairman, I may add it, we got we have the clerk's office, we may not be seeing this. I'll bring that up, but it's.
Oh, thank them.
Thank
Okay.
them.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not going
We
bad
assumed
on
you
this
meant all
one.
town employees.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Our
That's the
minutes,
easiest
our
way to say it.
cameras, everybody.
That covers it.
Everybody who makes this production happen and run the town, we thank them all.
The
Right,
ones
Mark.
who bring pizzas to the workshop.
That's right.
And our pizzas, yeah, pizzas for the workshop, salads.
The camera, oh boy, all in minutes, because it's been a hair raiser.
But I do think I would think if the room isn't full of folks, people do trust the work we're doing. And as the budget comes up, we could look to our emails for anyone who has a specific suggestion or concern. We look forward to that. But it is quiet in the room. Okay, we get into our administrative business. Let me look at this thing. Let's see if we can take all the consent agenda items together. Just a reminder to anybody watching, the consent agenda is where money is given to the town and all we have to do is appropriate it back to the line item it belongs on. So here we go. I'd like to take them all together, A, B, C, and D. A is an appropriation for $1,247 to the Highway Parks overtime. I have the memos, so I can't read the memos to go with it, but B is an appropriation for $528,109 to the capital fund for town aid to roads grant. C is appropriation of $8,640 to the town clerk on nominee fee program services. And D is an appropriation for $200,000 to the Brownfields Grant Fund for the DECD grant remediation.
The only one that needs explanation, obviously, is the brownfield ones. That because the additional testing.
Make a motion to approve the appropriations on the consent agenda as.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Carries 5-0. Okay. And we have 3 manager memos. The first is the biggest, an appropriation of $1 million even in the sewer fund for major maintenance.
As Tony already discussed. This was originally which structures, some of them are 100 years old or more, so that's not a good thing for your main sewer line. So instead of a 5-year plan, the sewer department certainly, which pleased me, had the ability to do it fast. Second time seeing these millions. Sewing front, just for the public, they're not from the town's general fund, town's undesignated fund balance. Calculate the cost of one of these.
What's the old borough?
There's the, if you think about downtown Signton and Plantsville, those are the old clay pipes. Put your mind around F&F concrete area, that area. Part of downtown, but Southington, it's the southern side of downtown Signton.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't got the map.
Yeah, but Old Borough obviously means that part of Signton that used to be governed by a borough, but incorporated town. So very old, and they're very large pipes. So, but I thank Annette Kari and the sewer department for making this a 5-year capital plan. False imagination, I didn't think.
I think we're 85% done with the old borough. Some left for, because
We have Annette here. She could have told it what the old borough was.
yeah. Oh, you should know.
Are we still generating a surplus, so we're building the sewer fund? Are we going to adjust the sewer rates
We're
at
going.
some point?
We're going to discuss this tomorrow about the financial strategy going forward.
Remember, we all know that there's one big cleanup cost in phase 4. So I know Mr. Grappone is working closely. Get those numbers first. Work on reserve.
We'll talk about that tomorrow. But one thing, the extent of the lining situation, the estimate is like $14.5 million. We'll have to everything. Okay? Everything. And then, of course, as soon as you get to the end,
You start again.
you start to look at things again. But just to get everything done to our satisfaction, so it's $14.5 million. If we vote on the million tonight, that'll take it down to $13.5 million. I'm trying to say there's still work left to be done.
Tip of the iceberg.
And I think there's at least for many years budget each year to do that. So yes,
And these are all the first lining of original pipes, right?
yeah, this is our first lining.
I wonder how many times you could line. Like down the road, do we have to,
The only
the
time
lining is thick. You make an 8-inch pipe into a 4-inch pipe.
The only time we've lined in the past was actual when there was problems. This is we're doing it proactively. So
Yep.
well, it's just money. Everything is just money. We could do anything fast as long as the finance director just issues the money.
And the Stonegate issues are all under control from years past.
Yes.
And as long as the vendors are.
Well, we were
To do
lucky.
the work,
We were
'cause that's
lucky. We
another
had the
issue.
vendor available to us, and we were able to appropriate the money to get the work done. So So we've already pat ourselves in the back enough on this one, so.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Oni, seconded by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, number 1 passes. Number 2 is a transfer in 2 parts. 11,500 highway parks for equipment maintenance and 11,500 highway parks for vehicle maintenance.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Okay, number 3, transfer $50,000 town attorney for legal services.
Mr. Chairman, this is one where, as you know, we have a certain amount in a paid position, and we have a certain amount for outside counsel. Due to COVID and several other reasons, we've been effective view, so we're shifting salary line into the town attorney.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, that carries. And now our favorite motion, 8:01 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we adjourn at 8:02.
I'm going to make everybody's night for a funny story, the reason why I'm running in and out of here the whole time. Are we off?
Yeah.